Welcome to the show that helps you find the next Apple, Google, Starbucks, or company you've never heard of. But if you bought its stock early, it could have made you filthy rich. I'm your host, Andra Nescu. Today our focus is on ETFs. So what exactly are ETFs, or exchange-traded funds? An ETF is a number of stocks and related assets in one sector that creates an entire basket of funds. The fact that they are low in cost, have strong tax efficiency, and trade pretty much like any stock on the open market can make them more attractive than traditional mutual funds. A little later, we'll be joined by 3 ETF providers and an investor. Each one will try to convince you that their strategy is what's best for your portfolio. Joining me now is our expert and analyst, the president of ETF Insight, who will now tell us more about how to invest in ETFs. Welcome to the show, Yves Robertet. Hi, how are you?
Good morning, Andra.
Good morning. So Yves, I've been doing my best to explain what ETFs are. Why don't you provide us with a bit more detail and maybe let us know how ETFs are different from traditional stocks and mutual funds?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. Relative to stocks, exchange-traded funds are baskets of securities.
Okay.
So whereas you might buy one stock, if you buy an exchange-traded fund that has a number of stocks in it, you have immediate diversification. Relative to a mutual fund, exchange-traded funds trade on the exchange and they trade intraday. As well, they tend to be passive in their approach relative to a mutual fund that typically would have an active manager taking care of the investments.
For the average retail investor, how can they take advantage of ETFs today?
I think the average investor needs to appreciate what the vehicle offers them, and the attributes haven't changed over time. They offer instant diversification, low cost, and transparency, and those are very attractive attributes because you know what you're dealing with when you buy an exchange-traded fund. Now, what they also need to appreciate is that there's a lot of choices that they can make, but that these are tools that have a place in their portfolio.
What are the advantages, the tax advantages specifically, with ETFs over mutual funds?
ETFs tend to have lower turnover,
okay,
and that translates into, in all likelihood, less capital gain generation that will be attributed to individuals that own that exchange-traded fund.
Okay, so can you tell us your history covering ETFs and what exactly makes you an expert?
I've been in the investment industry for a number of years, and I've had the privilege of following exchange-traded funds pretty much here in Canada through the whole period from 1999 to the present. So going back to 99, there was one exchange-traded fund with $400 million in it. You fast forward to 2011, we have over 200 exchange-traded funds in Canada with in excess of $40 billion in assets. There's a lot of different ETFs now covering all manners of investments, and I spend a considerable amount of time analyzing them, looking at what their attributes are, how they work, and that is essentially the reason I've established my own firm,
right,
ETF Insight, to help investors with that.
What are some past big winners, let's call them, in the ETF sector?
Good question. This year, definitely the BMO covered call on banks
yes,
ETF has been very successful, accumulating close to $600 million of assets since its inception this past January. In recent past, you've had very successful launches of ETFs covering the BRIC region. You've had several ETFs covering corporate bonds that have accumulated several $100 million of assets as well. You've had access to high-yield securities. That's also been very successful, and preferred shares.
And with that wealth of knowledge, what ETF sectors or funds look promising in the future, would you say?
I think specific factors ETFs will resonate with investors. There are ETFs that aim at targeting specific levels of volatility, so they may pick specific stocks that they'll bundle in an exchange-traded fund vehicle that exhibit lesser volatility than other stocks. So for your average investor that gets caught in the gyrations of the market and that is perhaps uncomfortable with what is going on,
right,
if they're looking for something that will dampen some of that volatility, that's likely a product that will resonate with them. Also, cash flow considerations always come into into play. And I think that we have a number of covered call writing ETFs on the market. I think this coming February, March, when RSP season is on, I think a lot of money will go into these ETFs.
Thank you so much for that, Yves. I look forward to hearing more from you at the end of the show in our last segment. We're going to take a quick break right now, but when we get back, we'll hear from 3 exchange-traded fund providers and investor who will tell you more about how their ETF stock could be the next biggest winner.